how to create all kinds of painted designs using Affinity Photo's displacement maps, as well as distortions and deform, as well as gradients. So let's just go right back to the beginning. Move tool and delete those. Then go to layer and new layer. And I'm just going to use a grayscale image. So just go here and gradient tool, apply gradient, white to black. I'm also going to create another layer and new layer, exact same, but this time I'm going to go to window and swatches. I've got some gradients here, so I'm just going to create a nice colourful gradient. Now you will have different gradients, but any sort of nice colourful gradient you've got, apply that. And once you've done that, what you can do, you can then use this layer as a displacement map. So I'm just going to deselect that, go back to this. Now at this point, it's not very good as a displacement map. It's a very basic one, could work, but with it selected and this one not visible, you can now go to filters and you can go down to distort and deform. And I'm just going to distort it. Now it doesn't matter if you create this. I don't think it's going to be such an issue because after a while, once you've started blending lots of layers together and combining them, you will not probably see these lines. But you can see what happens. I've got these pins and I'm dragging them in. Dragging them in like that. And I'm just going to click apply. This is using rigid. And what I can then do is go to filters and repeat deform. I always prefer to do this. Apply it a couple of times. So now the result, you get this slightly unusual sort of distortion there. And again, do it again 3 or 4 times, and you start then getting holes in it. And again, you're going to see you've got this. Doesn't matter. Again, by the time you've distorted everything, modified things, you will probably hardly notice that. And you can also resize it. And again, apply again. And so on. And now you've got that. Well, once you've got that, that's going to be displacement map. So let's just go back to this pixel layer, bring it back again. Then go to filters, and then down to distort, and down to displace. This is the key one, displace and deform. So displace in this case for this image, and now you've got here strength 10 pixels. Now it would be nice if you could go different angles. I don't know why they've never added that. Why there's no randomization would be lovely as well. But you go down here, you can load map from file, but I want the layer beneath, which is that grayscale one. So load maps from layers beneath. And now you can see that you've got this lovely distortion, and you can obviously set this value and go backwards and forwards. And you can see the result of that. So maybe put it there. Click apply. And what you can then do is again repeat, and you can see you can apply it multiple times. So you can create some really weird and wonderful distortions on this layer. But at the same time, you can always go back here, and here's the layer. You can always go to repeat displacement map on this. Now this will be using this image as the displacement map. There's no layer beneath, but it's still got it stored. So you can always just apply it to this. And then you can create some very odd designs to this one as well. And you can see the result of that. Now sometimes good, sometimes not. That's just using the repeat. Also, you can always go to filter and deform again. So you can distort this, create this in all kinds of weird and wonderful ways. So let's just distort this. And I like to create these sort of really torn sort of parts of the image so you can see got this sort of distortion like that. Drag this in, drag that in, and click apply. And you can, of course, filters, repeat, deform. And you can see endlessly combining this with repeat. So once you've got this again can be used as a displacement map. So go back to pixels, click here. Then you can go to filters and again distort and go to displace. So with displace, now it doesn't remember that distortion. Once you come back into it, it's forgotten it. I wish it didn't. I wish there was a preview, wish it would remember the last 5 used. Would be great. It doesn't do that. Don't know why not, but it would be really useful if that feature was available. But load map from layers beneath. And you can see now it's using that design I just created. Click apply. And again, repeat. And you can see, do that. Also what you can do, if you want it to go the other direction, because you see it's just going one way, what you can do, right click, transform and flip horizontal. Why that transform feature is not in the layers or other places, or the edit menu, makes no sense, but right click and you've got transform. So flip horizontal or flip vertical as well. Again, repeat displacement map, and again you can see now the result of that. And you can play again, repeat displacement map. Now of course you can distort this as well. So you can always go to filters, distort and deform if you want to. Perfectly reasonable, so go in there, it's being applied to this, and you can just distort this. Now one thing with this, you will end up with these lines. I don't want that, so I can just distort it in all kinds of different ways. You can stretch it and warp it, maybe go for this effect. Stretch it out like that, but just try and avoid any lines that you're going to get. It just doesn't look so nice in this case. Then, again, you can go to here, so just deselect this, and you can work on this. So make certain you select it. One thing when you're doing this sort of video, when you're going through, running through, is always make certain you're selecting the right layer, applying the effect to the right layer. Sometimes it's not always. So repeat deform, then you can see the result on that. Again, pixel layer, bring that back again, go to filters, distort, and again, displace. Again, it doesn't remember what you just used, so you need to click load map from layer beneath, and you can then see, as you do that, you've got this very complex. Now, what's happening is you're getting these lovely strips. Now, there's a bit of coarseness coming in. Click apply. And of course, if you apply it again, you can see it becomes even worse, a bit of the coarseness. If you get that, I always find, now I would love to see an oil paint filter or some tool. I think that this is really lacking that sort of feature. But Gaussian blur, just go for that, maybe just slightly blur. It's not the best. There's other filters, of course. You could always use some of the box blur, but I'm just going to just apply that. Again, filters, blurs, maybe motion blur, zoom blur, radial blur. Just try them. See which one you think just works best for what. Got a nice blurring effect there. Click apply. Again, go to filters and distort, and again displace. And then you can use this one again. Just go load map from layers beneath, click there, and you can see as you do that, that distorts and you've got that image there. Let's just move that out of the way. I've got that swatch. I don't want swatches there, so it's just. And you can apply this multiple times. You can keep working on this. And of course, you can always go to this pixel layer. Let's just deselect that. And you can always, with that selected, right click. And then you can go down here and transform and flip horizontal for this as well. Maybe blur this as well. That's another option. So filters, blur, and Gaussian blur. That can be blurred. And then click apply. And then again, go back to the pixel, make sure that's on, it's selected, filters, distort, and displace. And just go through this again, load map from until you actually select it. It doesn't know what you're going to be using, and you can see the result of that blur. Just create some lovely trails of colour there as that goes there. Now another thing you can do, and one of the things I often do, is I use apply image. So I'm just going to go to filters and apply image, and with that you've got this option, and yet again this sort of feature of layers. I wish this was everywhere in the application. It's not, but use current layer source, and you can just go through the blend modes. So go with darken, multiply. Now for some weird reason, unlike lots of the features in Affinity Photo, this takes a bit of time to process. So as you run through, you've got all the various options here. Saturation, you will see it takes a few seconds to think about it. So you can't, I think that one looks nice. Vivid light. But you can also manipulate it further with equations, and that's the reason I like to use this feature. I use it with lots of my filters because I can then go here, equations, and I can say, oh, you know what, it's slightly red. I don't want it as red. So 0.7. So I can just reduce the red down a bit. SG, I want a bit more green, so I'm just going to go 1.4, and you can see you can bring in that and click apply. And you've got that result. And of course you can always go repeat apply again, see what it does. Or undo if it's not exactly what you want. And you can still go for filters and again distort and displace or deform. So I'm just going to go there again. Remember, always click load map and then drag down. Now another option that's really useful to always use, and you can see now I'm just creating these long lines because I've used the same displacement map, you can always go to layer and fade displacement map. Any point you can always do in fade, and you can see as you do that, you can go backwards and forwards just to see what. Now, I don't know why the filters don't all have this option internally. Would be nice. But again, you can go through these and you can see as you try, just go for saturation. Let's put that way. Just run through them. You see, oh, you know what? Difference. That one looks great. Click apply and you can work with that. Now, also what you can do, of course, is you can then use this maybe as the displacement map and maybe create another image and so on. You can see you can create all kinds of variations, but still you can always go at any point back to this pixel one and filters repeat displacement, apply that a couple of times, and you can see that creates some lovely these sort of abstract lines coming into here. Go back to this pixel, click here, and filters and distort, and again displace. And this time just scale, again load map from layers beneath, and you can see as you distort that going that way, right click, again transform, flip horizontal, and again repeat displacement map. Literally infinite amount of designs can be created using this brush. And of course, once you've created it all, you might like to go and add some adjustments. So you can always go, if you think it's a bit too dark, which I think it slightly is, you can always go to layer and then go down to new adjustment layer and levels. And you've got levels there, and you can just say, oh, let's just white level there, black level, and I think that maybe looks nicer. Maybe go with vibrance, and you can obviously add, and you've got all these adjustments here. You can always use those. But that is a way of creating some very, very abstract painted effects just from a very, very basic gradient. You will notice you might have to crop it slightly. You can always use a crop tool if you don't want these lines. So I always find that it's probably, if I think, oh, the best bit of it about there, maybe move it around slightly, just decide which part you think that looks nicer, click apply. So you've got that end result of that. Well, hope you found this tutorial of interest. Any questions about any of the techniques in this, always great to hear from you. Also, a like or dislike, always appreciated. Also, please subscribe to the channel, always adding new tutorials about Photoshop, Affinity Photo, etc. Thank you much.